Minister of the UK walked out of those meetings, Gordon Brown said, the Washington consensus is dead. Which is a pretty profound statement. And Obama echoed that, though not saying it directly, he echoed it very strongly in his speaking remarks post meetings. So I think that's a really good indicator. Now I have to say, I don't believe that the Washington consensus is dead. I have cautious optimism. Because at the same meeting, of course, they gave $1 trillion to the IMF, which is one of the most flawed international institutions that we have. But more optimistically, they had interesting and divisive debates in the meetings about CEO salaries. So the AIG crisis has come home to roost for corporations when the G20 is talking about whether or not they can cap CEO salaries. And though they walked out saying, we will not cap CEO salaries, they have talked about implementing policies that would force CEOs to get a vote from shareholders on salary increases and salary setting, or things that might introduce more transparency. But what it does do is open up for us as progressives a really good moment to hit home the corruption involved in CEO salaries. The fact that it went from 20 times the average salary to 300 times the average salary. And the fact that it should be brought back down to 20 times the average salary. And this is a really great opening for that kind of conversation and dialogue. So, though the Washington consensus might have a little life left in it yet, and will probably be resuscitated a few times with a DNR, but I'm hoping that we can put that DNR on it, and we will see the end of it. And I see that we have those opportunities right now to push for changes in the way we talk about things like CEO salaries. Red is the new black. All the governments around the world are talking about spend, spend, spend. The Obama administration has over $700 billion in stimulus package. Countries around the world are estimated to be spending in the range of $600 billion in infrastructure alone. So there is a real emphasis on stimulus spending, which creates a really great moment for us in Alberta to talk about moving away from tax cuts, moving away from program spending cuts, and moving into smart spending. And as this conference has been talking about a lot, about investing wisely. So where is Alberta going? Of course, not that direction. Unfortunately, Iris Evans has given some indications that there will be cuts. There's an informal hiring freeze on most government departments already. The healthcare minister, Leipert, indicated that he planned to cut back on healthcare infrastructure, which means hospitals and long-term care facilities. Even while we have waiting rooms and emergencies backed up because of lack of long-term care beds. And he's indicated that he would like to cut 30 more services, 30 more, because we've already lost enough services out of healthcare, 30 more services to be delisted and deinsured. This is in addition to the cuts to seniors' benefits that we've already seen. So those are directions that are completely antithetical to the new spending mantras that we're hearing from very conservative economists around the world. Don't cut social programs. Don't take money out of consumers' pockets by increasing their healthcare costs at a time where we want to see them have more confidence in more spending. So unfortunately, the Alberta government has given indications that they are going to continue business as usual with their knee-jerk reaction to changes in the world economy and in the Canadian economy. And it's unfortunate, but we do have a very good moment for pushing for a very different direction. And we can say as progressives that we cannot have a business as usual budget this time around. It has to be different. And so talking about how it might be different, one of the things that we've really lost track of is what's the economy for? Should the economy serve the people, or should the people serve the economy? And in two key ways of late, the economy has not been serving the people. One, I would say tax cuts, and the second, I would say relying on oil and gas. And I'll talk about them each sequentially. First, on tax cuts. Why are conservative economists saying not to cut taxes in the recession? Because up until now, tax cuts have been a mean and ending themselves, seen as good in and of themselves assumed to be good. And the reason is because, one, people don't spend the tax cut, they save it or put it into debt. Second, what little they do spend goes mostly to imports, because Alberta is highly import dependent, and those leak out. So what you have in the end is a very small stimulus locally from a tax cut. And that's what the economists are saying. Some even have said it's down as low as 13 cents on the dollar. It's local stimulus. And that's indirect, right? So, so that kind of brings a lie to the assumptions behind tax cuts that somehow they serve the public interest. Because all of a sudden, direct government spending is the solution, not tax cuts. Which means tax cuts actually didn't serve the public interest. So that's another good opening for progressives to look at, saying this is a great moment to change the way we talk about taxes, to demonize tax cuts the way deficits were demonized before. Where deficits have become illegal, tax cuts should be illegal. They should have to go to a referendum, and the public should have to decide what they're going to give up if we're going to cut the taxes. So we lost sight of the vision that guided taxes and what taxes were for and what they served. The other flip side of that is the vision that guides oil and gas. Oh, back on tax cuts. The other reason they're so ineffective is because people don't actually know they happened. The Harper government had $60 billion in tax cuts, including a high-profile GST. So they announced $60 billion over 6 years in tax cuts. And a poll shortly afterwards of Canadians found that 61% of Canadians thought taxes had gone up or stayed the same. 61%. After Harper had been cutting them as publicly as he possibly could, 61% thought they went up. So not only are they not effective as instruments, economic instruments, but they're not effective as public policy tools. So moving on to oil and gas. What does that serve? I'm sure everybody in this room knows who's interested most in served by oil and gas extraction in Alberta. Has it created jobs? To some extent. But if you look at the charts of jobs created for dollar invested, the lowest of any sector in the economy is oil and gas extraction. The fewest jobs for every dollar put in is oil and gas. You can get more jobs per dollar in any other part of the economy. So, it's not a job creation strategy. The bulk of the jobs in oil and gas right now are in the construction phase. It's a boom-bust set of temporary jobs in construction, not long-term jobs to sustain Alberta. So, it doesn't really create jobs, but of course, generates lots of wealth, right? Helps Albertans all. Rising tide raises all boats. Wrong again. Our studies and those of the Alberta Federation of Labour have shown that inflation rates were high enough to erode most of the wage increases during the boom. Middle-income Albertans weren't much better off. Those that had been unemployed and got jobs were better off, as we've now seen, temporarily. So there wasn't, contrary to what people outside Alberta thought, there wasn't a truck backing up at all of our doors and unloading money. But your truck was over at someone else's house, because there were a few people where that truck did back up at their back door. Those people actually worked fewer hours and got more money, where middle-income Albertans worked more hours and got the same. Those people worked fewer hours and actually got more money. So that our trucks were over at their place. And they were unloading money. The money was gushing up to a small portion of high-income earners in Alberta. And the other place, of course, that it went to was large profits for mostly foreign multinational corporations. So, if the goal of investment and economic growth in Alberta is to maximize profit for foreign corporations and income for a small portion of high-income earners, then the model we have serves fabulously. It's doing a great job.